The vids are full of stories about guys who fall behind on their podcasting debts and get murdered for it. But that's not actually how it usually works. After all, while it may be hard to collect episodes from live guys, it's indisputably even harder to collect them from dead ones. And in the end, collecting the debt is all somebody like Darius Blank of Lord Party Media really cares about.
Didn't realize you had loan sharks on staff.
Well, people owe me episodes, and sometimes they don't pay up. So you do what you got to do.
You got to keep them alive, though.
Yeah. Dead hosts don't make episodes.
Welcome to Science Fiction Book Club, a podcast for bookworms and stargazers. In every episode, we dive into the pages of our favorite science fiction novels to break down the big ideas, ask the nerdy questions, and maybe, just maybe, learn a little bit about ourselves along the way. I'm your host, Obssa, and with me, as always, is Abu, the
That's
one
right.
and only.
Abu17, actually.
Abu17.
Yeah, you unfortunately didn't meet the previous 16.
Oh, they all went down painfully.
Real painfully. I don't remember all the deaths, but I'm told.
Yeah, this is the best one, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Best instantiation.
Yes, I like to believe I'm finally the best version of myself on the 17th try.
That's right.
We're already getting into the jokes. We're already getting into the Mickey7 jokes. Folks, today we are here to talk about Mickey7 by Edward Ashton.
That's right.
I'm excited, Obssa. This was a fun book to get into. We're covering the first 6 chapters.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously, spoiler warning. Before you listen to the rest of today's conversation, make sure you read the first 6 chapters of the book. Also, as a reminder, we encourage you to read along with us and share your thoughts. So email us at sci-fi-bookclubpod@lordparty.com, and remember to join our Patreon at patreon.com/sci-fi-bookclubpod. That's where we post free reading guides and discussion questions. Sometimes we throw up bonus clips or bloopers that got cut from episodes up there.
That's right.
It's a good time. The Patreon is also where you can find the link to our Discord, which is free to join. That's where you can join our lovely little community and keep these nerdy sci-fi discussions going. And don't worry about jotting those links down frantically as a creeper is crawling up your leg. All of those links will be in the show notes below.
Well, here's the game plan for today's episode. As usual, we'll start with a summary of the 6 chapters that we cover in today's reading. Then we'll share some of our impressions, our predictions, our thoughts, and finally, we'll wrap up with our sci-fi analysis.
That's right. Okay, before we dive into all of that, let's take a quick breather, Obssa. Let's reprint our bodies. We'll be back in just a minute, dear listener. Don't go anywhere.
All right, welcome back. As usual, we'll start with a quick summary of the first 6 chapters from today's reading.
Yep.
Beginning with, of course, chapter 1, in which
That's
we
a good place
meet.
to start.
Usually. So in chapter 1, we meet Mickey, or more precisely, Mickey7, an expendable who serves as the physically replicable and therefore disposable human on the frozen colony planet Niflheim.
Yep.
The story opens with Mickey7 having fallen to the bottom of a crevice during a scouting mission. He talks over radio with his friend, Berto, who flew him to the location. We'll get into it. who flew him into the location in Creeper territory, home to the centipede-like native creatures of the planet. Berto claims Mickey can't be rescued. But really, it's clear he's just unwilling to risk his own life in the attempt. Quote, "It's not like you're really dying or anything." Mickey then talks to his girlfriend Nasha, who wants to rescue him, but he refuses to let her jeopardize herself either. Though he considers letting himself freeze to death and tells Nasha that his survival instincts naturally kick in and he begins exploring the surrounding tunnels. Suddenly, he encounters a mysterious creature in the darkness, not exactly a creeper, but a terrifying, massive creature with razor-sharp teeth that picks him up and carries him away. Unexpectedly, it drops him off in a tunnel close to the surface, allowing him to escape. Making his way back to the human base, Mickey briefly chats with the station guard Gabe before heading to his apartment. When he arrives, however, he's greeted by none other than his replacement, Mickey-8, who's been brought to life. And here we have it.
Here we have it. That's right. We'll get more into that in our sci-fi analysis. Continuing with our summary, Chapter 2. In this chapter, we dive into Mickey's backstory on the Union world of Midgard. We learn that on Midgard, they have like universal basic income, basically.
Right.
A lot of the labor is automated,
Right.
and the sort of like payoffs from that labor is then distributed amongst the populace. It sounds like sort of pseudo-utopian, but not like quite the utopia that like A Psalm for the Wild Built was, for example. A little bit more realistic. But a lot of things like hunger, poverty, those have been solved.
Yeah.
And humanity is now spending its time expanding its horizons, sending out colony ships like the Drakkar. So Mickey applies to leave on this colony ship, this interstellar ship, the Drakkar. And in this chapter, we learn how the recruiter grilled him, basically.
Yeah.
Why do you want to do this?
Right.
The recruiter in this chapter makes it very clear. This is not a job you want. This is a job that is not going to be fun. You're going to be subjected to excruciating pain time and time and time again. You are literally going to die time and time again. It's not going to be fun.
No.
But Mickey persists and signs on the dotted line. And that's it. He's approved. And he obtains, in his own sardonic words, quote, a shitty kind of immortality.
Right. I really liked that line.
Yeah.
In chapter 3, continuing, we return to Mickey-7's apartment, or is it Mickey-8's now? That's precisely the problem that we've got here.
That's right.
The two duplicates are clearly in a pickle, as the Union doesn't approve of what they call multiples.
That's right.
Their predicament is both socially taboo and it's legally forbidden. Plus, they obviously don't have enough food rations to split between the two of them. They're talking about something on the order of 1,000 kilocalories or so, which is not enough, to be clear.
Right.
And they agree that they need to keep their existence kind of a secret from anyone, even their best friend Berto and their girlfriend Nasha. In a kind of dark comedic moment, but certainly dark, they end up deciding to play rock, paper, scissors over which of them has to essentially off themselves, just commit suicide, jump into the biocycler, which is horrible, but they don't really have much of a choice here. It's clear that they can neither survive on their own, and it's clearly unacceptable to the rest of the colony for there to be two Mickeys.
Okay, chapter 4. We jump back to Midgard and we continue to get more backstory about Mickey and the circumstances that actually drove him to become the expendable of the Drakkar mission. In short, he accrued a bunch of debt to a person you don't want to be indebted to.
No.
And in fact, he accrued this debt betting on his best friend Berto. Betting against.
That's right.
his best friend Berto.
Yeah.
He kind of discusses the colony ship with Berto in this chapter and wonders if he too could kind of go with his best friend onto this mission. And there's no chance. Only the best of the best get picked for these colony missions. It's clearly something that's highly regarded.
Yeah.
It's a prestigious position to do. It's well respected. It's a thing that you sign up for.
Or you've got great connections. Which
or you've got wonderful...
He does not, to be clear.
No political connections. No. Clearly he's got no money. He's running in the deep, deep
Basically
red.
Doesn't have a career. I mean,
no career. He's a historian. Right, exactly.
Which is a hobby, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Mickey's got no prospects.
Right.
And there's no way he's getting on this colony ship with his best friend either. And so he kind of goes home. He's like, sure, whatever. Like, I guess I owe money to this loan shark, but what is he going to do? He's not going to kill me. You can't get money back from a dead guy. So here's what the loan shark does. His goons show up at Mickey's apartment and subject him to a neural inducer. Folks, here's a quote on what a neural inducer does and what it feels like. Quote, if you're curious about what I experienced, try skinning yourself alive while a friend works you over with a blowtorch. That might get you about 10%
Oh my God.
of the way there. End quote.
Horrible.
Wild stuff. I mean, truly indescribable, right?
Yeah.
Certainly serves as motivation for this character
Totally.
to get the fuck off this
Oh, yeah.
planet, no
Oh, yeah.
matter how he does it.
Yes.
And of course, how he does it is to immediately go to the recruiting office the next day, sign up for the expendable position, the only position that's open still on the Drakkar,
Yeah.
the only position that no one else has signed up for.
That's right. And moving on to chapter 5, we're again back with Mickey7 and 8. Mickey7 is moments away from being pushed into the biocycler, essentially. And it's quite a harrowing moment. He realizes he's going to die, and he feels that this immortality thing, it's not, I don't know, death is still death, pain is still pain.
Yes.
But fortunately, at the very last minute, Mickey 8 changes his mind about their suicide murder pact, and they decide not to go through with it. But they have to figure out what to do then. They're deliberating on their circumstances and agree again to keep this between them. They'll somehow figure out how to divide their rations up, subsist on the bio paste, and maybe there will be just enough to keep them both alive, even if emaciated and not thriving by any means.
Right.
And soon after, Mickey7 goes and he has breakfast with his girlfriend Nasha, who's caught in a bit of an emotional bind.
Yeah.
Sitting in front of her is her boyfriend,
right,
but
who
he
died
just
the previous
died.
night.
And that leaves her feeling quite terrible, honestly.
Yeah.
And as Mickey puts it, immortality is confusing, huh?
To say the least.
To say the very least. Well, Berto joins them in any case, and he
This fucking guy.
seems to notice. So in any case, Berto joins them, and he clearly senses something is off about Mickey, who keeps nearly revealing knowledge he shouldn't possess.
Yep.
It also emerges that Gabe, the guard that Mickey7 saw when he returned to base, is now missing and presumed dead. And Mickey realizes he was the last one to see him. And it starts to get him questioning whether the mysterious creature that quote-unquote rescued him was somehow involved.
Uh-oh.
Just curious.
Uh-oh.
And the chapter ends with Mickey7 receiving a summons from command to report to Commander Marshall's office,
That's
presumably to get chewed out for having to have yet another body print.
That's right. Okay, chapter 6, our final chapter today. We once again flash back, and we learn a bit more about Mickey7's complicated history with Commander Marshall,
Right.
who's very much like a buzz-cut, straight-laced brick of a man.
Oh, yeah. Buzz
Right?
Lightyear,
Buzz Lightyear,
Classic.
very like American war hero,
right.
straight-laced military guy.
Right.
And Mickey clearly rubs him the wrong way, like from the jump.
Right.
We learned that Mickey had already irritated Marshall by complaining about the colonists' luggage,
Right.
which change of plans. None of you are getting luggage
Yeah.
because we can't carry the extra mass on this
Right.
ship. More significantly, we learned that Commander Marshall belongs to the Natalist Church, which believes in the, quote, sanctity of the unitary soul.
Wow.
Essentially, one body, one soul.
Right.
Simply put, is Commander Marshall's belief. And that's it. That's where the chapter ends. And we really get a sense that the commander hates Mickey. It's going to be a rough ride for Mickey.
Oh, yeah.
And that he's perhaps a little bit out of his depth.
Right.
Considering he didn't look up anybody on social media.
Right.
Like some of his fellow
Did
colonists
no research. Yeah.
Did no research,
Yeah.
signed up for this thing in a panic and
Yeah.
showed up.
Yeah.
It's clear Mickey is a little bit in over his head.
Right.
So that's our summary. That's the opening of the book.
That's
Quite
right.
quite a bit of setup, right? Like
Oh, yeah.
we're setting up the stakes.
Yes.
We're setting up some of the conflict. We're setting up who the characters are and what
Right.
the backstory is.
Right.
What are you thinking so far? Early impressions of the book. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of standard sci-fi in many ways, and I am here for it.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah.
I'm not difficult to please necessarily, and I think this is hitting kind of all the sweet spots for me, where
Amazing.
we have a character that isn't kind of isn't overpowered. He's really a pretty average guy on a planet that seems to have solved some of the problems that hopefully, 1,000 years from now, we know how to distribute food
Yeah.
amongst the planet's inhabitants.
Yes.
And I'm enjoying it. I think I like all of the dark humor. I think so far the dilemmas that we're encountering I think make sense. Mickey7 having a clone of himself running around and
Yeah.
that not being the most well received thing by the rest of the colonists. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
If you can just continue to clone yourself at ad nauseum, then I can understand why a church would spring up around it and have some beliefs that discourage that
Yeah.
practice essentially.
It makes sense.
And I also I like that turn of phrase, the sanctity of the unitary soul,
Yeah.
and it's certainly interesting. And I think that the science so far hasn't been overwhelming compared to some books that we've covered in the past. I mean, you take a hard sci-fi novel like Three Body,
Yeah.
and it's told from the perspective of a scientist, written by a scientist, and it's a lot of science. Sometimes your eyes kind of glaze over. You don't have that experience with this book.
No, not
this
here.
reads more like a kind of an adventure novel with some science sprinkled in, and a
Yep.
really kind of intriguing philosophical and scientific kind of conceit at the heart of it. So
Yeah, exactly.
so far, I'm I think this is kind of hitting the right notes for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Now let me hear what you think. About.
I agree for the most part.
Yeah.
It's only 6 chapters in. I breezed through these 6 chapters. This is not a difficult read by any means,
No.
right? And so I'm having fun. I think the setup is fun. I'm excited to see where things go. The premise is interesting enough,
Yeah.
right? What do we do when we have 2 copies of the same person?
Right.
I think that's an interesting dilemma to explore. But I think I'm a little bit more hesitant than you because I'm not entirely hooked by the story yet.
Yeah.
And again, it's very early to say that. So
Right.
that's like the huge caveat here. We could read like 4 more chapters and suddenly I'm in.
Right.
It's a lot of setup still. But it doesn't have its hooks in me yet. And I'm not quite blown away by anything yet. You
Yeah,
know,
fair.
it doesn't really hit the ground running. We're establishing things and a lot of them are quite familiar,
Totally.
especially if you're a sci-fi reader.
Yes.
The good things, I think the writing so far is good.
Yeah.
You know, I don't really have any issues with it. Is it like the most beautiful poetic writing that's blowing me away? No. But
No.
also for this kind of like you said, adventure
Yeah.
sci-fi story, I don't think it needs to be.
Yeah.
I think it's paced well, which it does really well. Like we're balancing a good amount of flashback to fill in story and get us
Right.
caught up, but then also present day action that's moving the plot forward.
Right.
I think the most compelling part of the story so far is sort of the central conceit, the idea of the expendable,
Yes.
what that means for the human soul, what
Right.
that means for immortality, quote
Right.
unquote,
Right.
and in particular now what that means when you come face to face with a
Right.
copy of yourself.
Right.
Okay, so some of my, again, I hate to call them criticisms because it's too early in the book to criticize anything, but some things that are holding me back still. I'm not connecting with any of the characters yet.
Fair.
Don't like Berto. Nasha is just kind of the girlfriend sidekick right now. I
Yeah.
hope she has more to do in the story later. The real problem, like a book like Murderbot is also kind of like a light adventure novel, right?
Yeah.
But you're instantly kind of hooked because Murderbot is so endearing.
Right. Right.
I am not very attached to Mickey yet
Yeah.
as a main character.
Yeah.
I kind of find the cheeky comedy everyman doofus vibe
Yeah.
actually kind of like a little off-putting and a bit cliche.
Sure.
You know, I feel like enough novels have gone down that direction now that it's more cliche than it is unique
Right.
to have your main character not be special.
Yeah.
So I'm still waiting for Mickey to grow on me. He's not a bad character by any means. I'm just not resonating with Mickey yet.
Yeah.
The larger thing that's kind of bothering me is I can't quite shake the feeling that I have read all of this before.
Right.
We have a colony mission.
Yes.
We have a quirky everyman main character. We have an asshole commander. We
Right.
have alien bugs who are clearly showing signs of intelligence,
Yes.
like this
Sentience
bug,
or something.
some sort of sentience, some
Yeah.
sort of groupthink, whatever it is. It's Starship Troopers. It's it's a mashup. It's Ender's Game.
Yeah.
It's a mashup of like many sci-fi tropes.
Totally.
And I guess what I'm waiting for is for the book to show me its take on these tropes.
Right.
These first 6 chapters have not shown me that yet.
Yeah. Right.
So I'm still kind of waiting for that. And the little voice in the back of my head is just saying, I've read this before, though. When is it going to get different?
Right.
I'm waiting for it to get different.
Yeah.
As an aside, I think one of my biggest red flags as sort of just like a human being in general.
This will come as a surprise to you listeners.
Is that I generally don't enjoy comedy
Yeah.
as a genre.
Right.
Across anything.
Yeah.
Books, movies, TV shows,
Yeah.
whatever it may be.
Yeah.
I do not go out and seek comedy.
Right.
I avoid most comedy movies. And
Yeah.
I like if a book is supposed to be funny, I kind of just don't, I brush it off and don't
Right.
read it.
Right.
Obviously, I'm missing out on a lot. This is not me denigrating a whole genre. This is me saying I don't like comedy.
Yeah.
And in a weird way, I don't find a lot of things funny.
Yeah.
I don't know what that says about me. Feel free, dear listener, to psychoanalyze me and send in your theories
Yeah.
on what kind of trauma that is.
Yeah.
But the comedic tone, all of that is to say, the comedic tone of this book, and I think this has kind of is also related to why Mickey's not resonated with me.
Yeah.
He's kind of like a goofball.
Yeah.
The comedic tone isn't working for me.
Fair.
But again, it's really not a knock against the book. That's a knock against me. Like, I just don't find things funny. That's like a kind of a crazy thing to say because I laugh at things and I love, like, Key and Peele is the best show ever made.
100%.
That's clearly a comedy show.
Yeah.
I clearly like a type of comedy, but generally most comedy doesn't work for me.
Yeah. I think the mixing of the worlds too, like it's just too much of a clash, perhaps. Like to have a comedic sci-fi adventure novel. That's maybe too many things in one.
And this is completely a me thing.
Yeah.
It's not a book thing at all.
Yeah.
But there's that.
Yeah.
Comedy is generally a genre I avoid.
Mickey falling asleep while he was being carried by the non-creeper didn't get you.
Didn't get me. You know?
That's fair. Yeah.
That's funny because that didn't even read as like a comedic bit to me.
Yeah. Interesting.
It read as like is he tired? And for
Yeah.
a second, I was like, did the creeper release pheromones that put him to sleep? You know?
Right. Oh, I see.
The comedy, like,
I see.
went right over my head.
Right. Yeah, it's not, I will say, it's not necessarily laugh out loud funny. Like, so far, I haven't gotten that kind of vibe from the book. But I will say, on the other end, I certainly appreciate it. I'm really quite honestly digging it. Because it's
good.
like,
I'm glad.
This is, it's like, it's also even his pursuing the path of an expendable.
Yeah.
A path in which he will have to suffer excruciating pain over and over and over again and die over and over and over again as a way of avoiding the short-term pain that he was going to experience on Midgard. Being
of having to pay his debts back. Right?
Yeah. It's like, what?
Exactly.
I enjoyed even that,
And that's absolutely fair. And I hope people do. I do think like a part of the draw of this book is the comedy.
Yeah.
It's just not landing for me. I'm going to caveat all of this once more.
Yeah.
All of these thoughts I just stated could absolutely change in the next episode because we are so early in the book.
100%.
And so none of this is an indictment of the book.
No.
None of this is me even criticizing the book yet. It's just the vibe I'm getting in the very early 6 short chapters we've read so far. And I'm genuinely looking forward to seeing where things go because I think we've set up, again, a great premise that can go in a lot of fun and interesting directions.
Totally.
So I hope it does.
Yeah. Well, speaking of where things go, any early predictions?
I'm going to abstain from predicting because I will admit I have read quite further into the book. I'm like over the halfway point.
Right.
Just because I need to get ahead on reading. And
That's right. Blah. And you also have Mickey-17 and perhaps a screener coming up.
That's right. I am seeing the film Mickey-17, so I wanted to try and get through as much of the book as I could. And we're both going to go see the movie. We'll cover it on the podcast here, folks.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that bonus episode as well.
I'll make just one prediction. I don't have a ton of them in any case.
Yeah, let's hear it.
And it's really straightforward. I do feel that Mr. Berto will be betraying Mickey at some point in this novel.
Easily.
There's just been too much foreshadowing of his treachery and self-interest and unreliability for me to really think that his arc ends in anything but tears, essentially.
Yes.
And maybe we'll be laughing through those tears, but I think Berto does not... He does not inspire confidence, I will
Yeah.
say.
You know, if like Mickey, I was a betting man,
Yeah.
I'd put money. I'd put all of my money down and then some on your prediction.
That's right.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think we're seeing a Berto betrayal.
Yeah.
Coming down the pipe.
That's the vibe anyway so
Yeah.
far.
That's right. Okay, well, that is the summary and some of our early impressions
Yeah.
and a little prediction thrown in, folks.
right.
If you got some chips to bet with,
That's right.
go ahead.
Yeah.
When we come back, dear listener, we're diving into our sci-fi analysis of these first 6 chapters. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, listeners. And as always, we like to do a little bit of a meta-analysis of the
Yeah.
novel. Get into the author, their background, and just dig up what we can about the origin of the novel.
That's right.
So let's learn a little bit about Edward Ashton, the author of this publication. There isn't a ton of information, to be fair,
He's a
about
very
him
offline
online.
guy.
That's right. Which, you know what? Maybe we all should be, you know?
I aspire to it.
And in any case, he is the author of numerous sci-fi novels and short stories. He's been a lifelong fan of the genre, and partially thanks to his father, who also loved sci-fi. And so he began writing short stories as a kid, in fact.
Mm-hmm.
According to the bio on his website, he lives in upstate New York, and when he's not writing or spending time with his family, he's teaching quantum physics
What?
to grad students and conducting cancer research.
Okay.
So, quite an impressive man.
You know, when I'm not podcasting or spending time
That's
with
right.
my family,
That's right.
I'm melting into my couch,
Yeah, that's right.
watching Netflix, eating junk food.
That's right. All sorts of chips are being consumed.
So many chips.
Yeah.
I'm not doing cancer research, folks.
Nah.
To say
Or
the least.
teaching quantum physics at a very high level, you know. Very impressive.
Very impressive.
Yeah, in fact, according to his very impressive LinkedIn,
Uh-huh.
he's got a PhD in electrical engineering and medical imaging from
Amazing.
the University of Rochester, and is currently the vice president of oncology imaging at a clinical research company.
Oh
So
my God.
keeps himself busy
He keeps himself busy.
That's right.
Incredible. Yeah, that's an amazing CV.
for sure.
Okay, so let's talk about Mickey7. Ashton has said in interviews that the idea for Mickey7 originated from his fascination with the teletransportation paradox.
Right.
And this is an idea that he had explored in the past with a short story called Backup, but he felt that he had more to say about it.
Right.
And thus began his journey with Mickey7. He began writing Mickey7 in 2015, is when he wrote the first chapter, he says. It began as just a novella, you know, kind of evolved from short story to novella, and then he got feedback from his publisher and expanded it into the full novel
Right.
that we know today. Now, thanks to this part blew me away. Thanks to his miracle worker agent doing some sort of black magic sorcery,
Oh yeah.
Ashton was told in 2020, 2 years before the official publication of Mickey7, that his story had been optioned for a film adaptation and that Oscar-winning director Bong
Honestly.
Joon-ho was interested in adapting his future book.
Unbelievable. That is
Unbelievable.
honestly, it is very difficult to believe.
Truly.
That is wow. That's incredible.
Yeah, I have little knowledge of the publishing industry.
Yeah.
Maybe some of our listeners are more in tune with that sort of thing and
Yeah.
can fill us in. But to me, this feels like a thing that never happens.
Right.
Feels like an impossibility.
Right.
I don't know how common it is for stories to be shopped around to Hollywood
Yeah.
before they're published.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's wild. And not even that. I'm like, maybe that happens and maybe that's common. But then to be picked up by an
Yeah.
Oscar-winning director
Yes.
before your book comes out,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Whatever Ashton is paying this agent, it's not enough. Okay. So Ashton says that, you know, after he got this great news, he did get on a Zoom call
Right.
with Bong Joon-ho and was very impressed with the director's knowledge and curiosity about his story, about
Right.
his future book. He tells this little anecdote in an interview that director Bong asked him how creepers reproduce. And Ashton didn't have an answer for him because he hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, when Papa Creeper meets Mama Creeper.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
And so like that's how deep Bong Joon-ho was getting.
right.
With the questions and the world building and the lore. Like he was really interested in getting to know the ins and outs of this story so that he
Right.
could adapt it for his film.
Right.
Which is cool. That is reassuring. You know,
Yeah,
that's what you
totally.
want from someone adapting your
Oh,
work.
100%.
In fact, this is also interesting. Bong Joon-ho asked Ashton the one thing he felt would be absolutely necessary in the adaptation, the one thing he would be heartbroken to see cut.
Yeah.
And so Ashton said, Chapter 19. Try to get as much of Chapter 19 as you can in your film adaptation.
Okay.
And now I'm quite excited.
Something to look forward to. I'm
for
excited
our
for us.
read-through to get to
Yeah,
Chapter 19.
definitely.
Because by then we will have actually watched the film as well.
Right.
By the time we get to Chapter 19. So we'll be able to see how much of it that got adapted to the film, how much it retained.
Yeah. I think I heard that he in fact said, "I never do this." So he felt quite inspired by this book and by Edward Ashton's the premise here.
Yeah. And I really liked hearing the collaborative nature of that.
Definitely.
And the fact that director Bong was willing to sit down and like not only go deep on the story, but then to honor a request from the original author. I think that's a very respectful thing to do as one creator to another.
Absolutely. And in fact, Edward is, I shouldn't call him Edward. We're not friends. Eddie,
Eddie, my boy.
Edward Ashton, Mr. Ashton, is in fact an executive producer on the movie.
That's right. He'll be credited as an executive producer, but you know, that's kind of a nothing burger of a title because like title, Ashton himself has been very clear that he has nothing to do with the movie.
Right.
The rights, were bought and the adaptation was done. But he's completely uninvolved with the production.
Right.
He's he's been invited on set a few times.
Yeah.
He went to the London premiere recently. So he's involved in the sense that he gets the perks of his work being adapted.
Right. With none of the labor.
None of the labor. It's kind of the ideal. And the paycheck. He gets the paycheck as well.
Bit of a severance situation. Kind of great.
It's kind of great. No work, all reward.
That's right.
Obviously, he put the work in. Right.
Yeah, for sure.
But he did, however, tell Nerdist that he does completely trust Bong Joon-ho's vision for the film, and so he's not worried about the adaptation at all.
Right.
Quote, "In my view, the man's a genius. I don't believe he's ever made a bad film. And I sincerely hope that this isn't going to be his first," end quote.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Ashton seems like a pretty humble guy,
Yeah.
He seems kind of also blown away that his book is being adapted. And so I think he completely trusts Bong Joon-ho, as one should, to turn it into a great movie.
Right. Generally, the book opened with quite positive reviews.
Yeah.
NPR put the book on its Best of 2022 speculative fiction picks.
Yes.
And it was also nominated for the Goodreads 2022 Reader's Choice Award in Sci-Fi. It didn't win, but it got nominated.
That's already a huge deal. Yeah.
Gabino Iglesias wrote in Locus magazine, quote, "Mickey7 is a fun, fast-paced read. Ashton takes elements of noir, a dash of philosophy, and a healthy dose of humor, and infuses what could have been a straightforward science fiction narrative with a barrage of small details and stories within stories that make it the kind of book that is, pardon the cliche, really hard to put down." Pretty glowing review there.
That's a glowing review. And a lot of the reviews were like that.
Yeah.
It's actually tough to find a critical review.
You did manage to dig one up.
I dug deep.
I'll give you the honor of sharing it.
Sure. Yeah, I really dug deep.
Yeah.
A lot of the review sites out there and publications liked the book.
Yeah.
Generally positive. So I really had to go to goodreads.com. And I will say, I believe this is one of the most like upvoted or thumbs up. I don't know what Goodreads ranking system is.
Right.
It's one of the top reviews of this book. Is Yoon's 3-star review on Goodreads. And Yoon is a bit more critical. Quote, "When I started this book, I had high hopes. Not only is the premise fabulous, but the writing at first glance feels fast-paced and conversational, making this an extremely easy book to get into. The problem is that the story never really goes much past the premise. In fact, most of the conflict comes down to the two Mickeys being hungry. The rest of the time is spent on flashbacks to Mickey's earlier reincarnations and digressions on how other space colonies have done on different worlds. It's not that those aren't interesting, but they're just not what I was expecting." End quote.
Okay.
That's fair. I think we're too early in the book to understand like where this reviewer is coming from.
Right.
But it'll be interesting to keep this review in mind
Yeah.
as we're diving deeper.
Right.
Because I will say, if this review is true and Yoon isn't being like hyperbolic or overly critical, I too will be disappointed if it doesn't go much further than the premise.
All right. We do, in fact, have a prediction here. Now.
There we go. But we'll see. We'll see it. We'll see if that review holds true.
Yeah.
But there's a positive review. Again, much of this book had positive reviews.
Totally.
And we dug deep for something a bit more critical too.
Yeah.
To give you a balanced view here.
Yeah. Well, we like to now dive into what the dilemma is in this story. And I think we all know what it is. It's pretty straightforward. There are two Mickeys running around at the same time. And it's unclear how they can both survive given their limited rations. But also with a society that seems to exploit their utility, but also revile multiples and kind of revile them in their own way.
For sure. And I think, as we stated earlier, there is sort of like a practical dilemma for the two of them.
Yeah.
Because at this point, they've chosen not to kill each other.
Right.
They're going to keep things a secret.
Yeah.
And it kind of becomes like a, what's that movie where Lindsay Lohan does the thing with the, with the twin? It's not Freaky Friday. It's the Parent Trap.
Parent Trap. Yes.
There we go. We're in sort of like a sci-fi colony Parent Trap situation.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of happened with Nasha already without getting too far into that lewd moment. But there was a moment, though, where Mickey is a bit jealous of himself.
Oh, you mean where they almost fucked in the shower? That lewd moment, Obssa?
That's right. That's right. Can you be jealous of yourself? It turns out you can. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, actually, we joke, but that raises another part of the equation, another dilemma for these characters and in this story is the emotional dilemma.
Yeah.
How are the two Mickeys going to emotionally handle another incarnation of themselves walking around?
Right.
There's the logistics of how do we feed ourselves? How do we handle Nasha? How do we do our work and not get caught?
Yeah.
But also, how do we feel about each other? Can we trust each other?
Yeah.
Is the thing I felt throughout all 6 of these chapters.
Right.
I was like, why doesn't one of these Mickeys just like fucking shove this guy over the ledge?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But they both seem like quite kind-hearted people.
Right.
Mickey, in general, seems like a pretty good guy, a decent guy at the end of the day. And I think there's an emotional aspect here as well.
Yeah, but also ethical. I mean, I don't know. Like, is it totally ethical for them to both be dating Nasha? I mean, like
without telling her.
You know,
there's like a consent issue.
There's a little bit of a, and it's also like, but is there? They're the same. Are they the same? I mean, I think this is what we end up kind of going back and forth on continually.
And she's been dating him since Mickey 3, so
technically
she has been like dating different Mickeys this whole time.
Right, which also is why she feels emotionally kind of turbulent and uncertain about the whole thing.
Definitely.
And that's kind of the heart of the question. I mean, are they the same person? Are they actually distinct individuals? What are the ethics surrounding cloning?
Yes.
It's also clear there are some class and hierarchy questions because clearly nobody really wants to be an expendable. And at some point, it seemed that the recruiter was even going to conscript somebody to take on this role.
Right.
Which is really kind of fascinating and a little dark,
A little dark, right.
Yeah.
Again, kind of popping the bubble of the Midgard utopia.
Right.
It's a fun dilemma at the core of this book.
Probably not for them, but for us readers, certainly.
Yeah. Mickey's listening to this podcast like, I can't with these
they're not dapping it up right now, between themselves,
My God. So moving on from the dilemma, the other thing we always like to check in with at the start of the book is the leap. This is science fiction. It's asking us, the reader, to take a leap of faith and to accept certain new technologies, certain new premises.
Directions for humanity.
Totally. And we have a couple of leaps in this story, of course. We've already touched on a few, but to touch on them again, cloning technology.
Right.
We also have technology that can capture consciousness and memories of some sort.
Right.
This new body gets printed, Mickey's memories get downloaded back into that brain.
Right.
So we have that sort of technology as well. We also have the ability to travel to distant planets at or near the speed of light.
Right. 0.9 the speed of light, as I recall.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Nearly at the speed of light. And then, of course, this story, in a very classic sci-fi way, has local flora and fauna.
That's right.
So we have other life
Yeah.
on these planets that we are colonizing.
That are derogatorily referred to as creepers.
As creepers, right.
But
Just
they
a
are
general term.
just the natural inhabitants.
But clearly there's distinct,
At
because
least.
the thing that grabs Mickey is like slightly different
Yes.
and unrecognizable than
Right.
than what he's used to seeing.
Right.
And then, of course, we mentioned this earlier, but the idea that Midgard has, to some extent, created universal basic income
Right.
and reduced or exterminated outright poverty,
Right.
outright hunger,
Right.
as we know it today in the real world.
Yeah.
So these are some leaps of storytelling that the story is asking us so far. Where do you fall on these? Do these feel plausible to you? Which ones stretch the imagination for you?
Yeah. I mean, so far, pretty standard, you
Yeah,
know? So
yeah.
I tend to, there's nothing here that's so, I guess, remarkable and novel to kind of set me back. So I've already bought into most of this as a longtime sci-fi reader. So yes, it generally seems
Yeah.
plausible to me.
Sure.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
to some extent, I want it to be the case that like 1,000 years from now, we figured out some of this technology at least. I think
Yeah.
cloning is one that is really, it's just so ethically kind of murky that I'm not
Yes.
necessarily, all in on or bullish on
Uh-huh.
cloning in particular. But the way that, Ashton is telling the tale, it so far feels, par for the course. They've got these technical challenges, they've got technical solutions. And at the same time, of course, that there are still questionable moral choices being
Yes.
mid by
Yes.
individuals and by humanity at large. So far plausible, and I think I'm pretty bought in so far.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it?
I'm the same. I think
Yeah.
as far as the technology actually goes,
Yeah.
I'm pretty bought in.
Yeah.
Longtime sci-fi reader as well.
Right.
So this is par for the course.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff I can see happening.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. The one thing that actually feels a little implausible to me
Mhm.
right now is the colony mission.
Mm.
What is anyone getting out of it?
Mm.
Like, this is a one-way trip.
Yeah.
Nobody here expects to go back
Right.
home.
You never see your family.
You're never going to see your
Friends,
family,
anyone
your
again.
home.
And you can never communicate with them. There's
Right,
no
you're going so far away
That's
that
right.
in your lifetime, communication won't be established.
Right.
It'll be future generations
Right.
that will perhaps be able to communicate back home.
Right.
So what is anyone getting out of this?
Yeah.
And why sign up for this? Why is it so prestigious? Why
Right.
would Berto, who clearly has everything just going for him in
Right.
life,
Right.
why not just like play your pickleball and win your championships, Berto?
Right.
Why are you signing up for this other thing?
Yeah.
That I'm not completely sold on yet,
Yeah.
and the book has not sold me on yet.
That's a good point. There isn't enough said about, the motivations for pursuing something like this. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a leap of faith I haven't quite made yet for
Yeah.
this book.
It's a good point.
Okay, one more segment to go here. The gadgets.
The gadgets.
Sci-fi stories
love
of
our
gadgets.
gadgets.
There's a couple of fun
There
gadgets
are
in this
some
too.
interesting ones, yeah.
We have the oculars,
Yeah.
which seem to be some sort of eye implant.
Yeah, something like that.
You
I don't know if
know?
it's like a contact lens with
Yeah.
some built-in tech or what it is exactly.
Right,
but
Google Lens, like
Yeah.
right on your eye sort
right,
of thing.
Right. We all want that.
So we see oculars
Yeah.
being used. Apparently they're used for messaging,
Yeah.
messages pop up from command and stuff.
Right.
I'm sure they're used for other things too.
Yeah.
Little computer in your eye.
Right.
We also have biorecyclers and bioprinters.
Right.
That makes sense. Colony ship would need both of those things.
Yep.
We have memory upload and download tech,
Yes.
as we talked about. We have a colony ship fueled by antimatter.
Naturally.
Love an antimatter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Just the go-to for sci-fi.
Yes.
To be like,
yes.
what's going to power our matter?
Yeah.
And
Antimatter.
or dark matter.
Or
Yeah,
dark
some
matter.
stories
Yeah,
go dark
that's
matter
right,
route.
That's right.
Yeah, so we're kind of seeing the full gamut. I would
Right.
consider this book more traditionally sort of like high-tech sci-fi.
Yeah.
Right? More on the spectrum of like towards Star Trek.
Right.
And for example, like A Psalm for the Wild Build was
Right.
very grounded nature,
Yeah.
very low tech.
Ox bikes.
Ox bikes.
Pedal bikes, yeah.
Exactly. Versus here, we're getting like eye implants, biorecyclers, the more traditional high tech sci-fi stuff.
Right.
That is quite central and part of the story.
Yeah. I mean, very early, I think page 1, we talk about the ocular, and the need for Mickey to switch to the infrared spectrum because he couldn't see anything otherwise. And it's like, okay, yeah, I'm back home. I felt, I was like, this is more traditional sci-fi.
Right. Set lasers to stun.
Yeah, exactly.
I know where we're going with this. I got
exactly.
it. Yeah. Again, very traditional sci-fi.
Yeah.
And if you're a sci-fi reader, so far the book won't surprise you, and a lot of it will, like you said, feel like coming home.
Yeah.
You've kind of been around the block with
That's
all
right.
of this tech before.
That's right.
And that's the first 6 chapters
That's right.
of Mickey7.
Yeah.
I think we've set up a really fun premise. And again, even today, we've opened up a lot of can of worms of philosophical discussion.
Yeah.
And ethical questions
Definitely.
around relationships and realities of cloning and creating a new human being.
And what it means to be a person, I'm so fascinated.
I'm excited to
understand
get into
the divergences between the Mickeys and lots to unpack here.
Right. But for now, folks, we have some homework for you. So for the next book club episode, dear listener, make sure that you have read chapters 7 through 17. Read the next 10 chapters of the book, and then we'll be back to discuss.
That's right.
I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
And of course, if you're curious, you're like, oh my gosh, when do I have to read that by? What chapters again? I wasn't listening. First of all, pay more attention. Second of all, don't worry. You don't have to pay more attention.
That's right.
You can always find the link to our entire season's reading schedule, all the due dates, all the reading assignments, all the chapters, and future books. So you can get that pulled in at the library early, which I didn't do last time.
And it was a backlog that was like 30 people long or something, as you said.
Truly.
Yeah.
It was like an 18-week wait or something. And I was like, damn it, I'm just going to buy this.
Yeah.
So check out that schedule in the show notes below and make sure that you're on top of the reading so you can join us for these episodes.
Indeed.
And share your thoughts with us so we can include them in future episodes.
Yeah. Well, friends, the Biocycler is the heart and soul of any Beachhead podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It takes our shit, our tomato stems, our potato peels and rabbit bones and half-chewed gristle and eventually our corpses.
Oh my God.
In return, it gives us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and hopefully you will too.
That's right. And folks, be sure to check out the other shows on the Lore Party Podcast Network on loreparty.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at lore_party. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, nobody wants to live on cycler pace, but a desperate podcaster can do it for a very long time. And we are desperate.